What do we got?
The Zucker deal, he's obviously a guy who's scored a lot in this league. It's 1 year. Just can you explain just what intrigues you about him, why you added him?
Yeah, I mean, he's a proven guy in this league. He's played a lot of playoff games, around 700 games in the regular season. Been in the league a long time, and he's a versatile guy. He can play up and down the lineup, very competitive, can play a higher skill game or can play a more physical type game if you need. And just felt that that was the type of guy we were looking forward to that could be in that mix in that group of 9 somewhere, wherever Lindy decides to use him. But I just like his package, and I like his competitiveness, and I like his age of where some experience I think helps our group.
Are you still trying to add somebody to play in the top 6?
Yeah, I mean, I won't do it. It's not like the off-season stops, It's there's ongoing conversations. Plus, the dust settles a little bit, and you see where different teams are. But I really like where our group's at right now. I like it a lot. I like the look of our team. We had goals coming to this off-season, what we were trying to achieve, and I think we're a much better team today than we were a couple days ago.
How do you feel about the bottom 6 with the group of guys that you added today? And do you see is Lafferty somebody who can play center?
Yep. So when you look at the off season, kind of what we were looking to accomplish. We wanted to be harder to play against. We wanted to bring in more physicality, more identity, kind of into that bottom 6. We wanted to be a team that wears teams out, that can be relentless, on the forecheck and hard. And we want to be a team that's better, more responsible defensively. So when you look at the additions that we've brought in over the last few days now, starting with Malenstein, guys like Malenstein and Abe Cabell that hit hard, they're physical. I mean, I think all 3 of those with Lafferty had more hits than any of our forwards in last year. So they have an element. Lafferty is a really, really likable player. I kind of describe him as he's a winning hockey player. Plays center or wing, comfortable either way. Good penalty killer, really good speed and size. It's 6 foot. Can skate, and just a disruptive player. And he scored 13 goals last year. Can chip in offensively, but I like his versatility. The plan going in signing him was the thought of him playing center. But if we need to move him to the wing, we can do that too.
Gilbert's a guy, a lot of people here are obviously familiar with. I mean, does he? Do you want him to serve that 7th, 8th defenseman maybe? I mean, do you envision him here?
Yep. Gibby's a guy that just I've known over the years, obviously, and just from him being from here and watched him develop. I think he's turned himself into, last year, he really took a big step and turned himself into an NHL defenseman. He knows what he needs to do to play in this league. He's a big, strong kid who's very, very competitive and continues to work on his game to get better. He's not afraid to fight. He's done that a number of times. He competes hard, So again, another guy that you're bringing in some size, physicality. We don't have a lot of that on our back end, and we have size, but not as much after Sammy. Not as much of that heavy game that he brings. So, when I look at our group now, we have a lot of skill. We have a lot of talent. I think we've proven in this league over the last couple of years that we have guys that can. As talented as anyone and make plays. We needed to round the group out. We needed to get harder. We needed to just have a little more of a presence where we can go after teams and roll over and over and just become that tougher team to play against. And the skill is exciting and great, but we just needed to kind of get the mix a little bit better, and that was why we were so focused on that. We need to be better defensively. So those are the areas that we'll talk about as we get into training camp.
Is Krebs a guy that you have to re-sign him still, obviously, but is he a guy that you're looking at as maybe being a third line center? And how is that role? Is that going to change all under Lindy?
Well, yeah. I think Peyton Krebs is someone that he's still a young player. You've heard me talk about this. I think he showed a lot of signs over the last year of starting to understand the defensive side of the game. He's a very, very competitive kid. He's getting better and better, like in different areas. He's got great vision. He has offensive skill. We know that from his track record. Before we traded for him, and now he's still going to find his way. I think there's a chance for him, the upside of being a player that can play higher up the lineup, whether that's as a center, which we believe he is, or maybe eventually could he slide to the wing? Yeah, like we're open to that. But what I really like now is we have a group of players that Lindy and the coaching staff can kind of decide how they want to put the lines together. We have some high-end skill that we feel is that can play against anyone in the league when it comes to the skill, and now we have some physicality and compete, and some more veteran players that I think really give Lindy some ability to move things around a little bit.
Understanding that you just added 5 players in the last 3 days, where is it right now organizationally trying to recruit players? I mean, the first thing I'm sure most guys say to you is, you haven't made the playoffs in 13 years in a row. How difficult is it to even get in the room with certain guys just because of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some things with that, Mike, that for sure you look for players that want to win. So it's a natural question. Where do I fit? How am I going to win in the place that I'm going, if they have the choice, if they're unrestricted free agents? So, yeah, that matters. But, I want players that want to be here, and players that give me a quick, I'm not sure I want to be a Sabre because of whatever, then we move on to the next. I don't even give it a second thought. But, yeah, it doesn't even really phase me in terms of any of that type of stuff. But, yeah, of course, there's always going to be part of that. We have to hold up our end of the bargain here and win more hockey games, become a playoff team that's year after year there. But we're on that journey now, and that's where we need to take a step, and we need to do it this year.
You guys were 23rd in the league in goals per game last year. You lose Jeff. Victor signs elsewhere. And you guys added players today, but Zucker's had 120-plus goal season in the last several years. So where do you see the goals coming from with this?
Yeah, like I said, I mean, hey, like every team, you want to score more, and I think some of that can be just internally. Can guys take a big step and have a bigger offensive year? I'm not concerned about our talent, our skill level, or our ability to score goals. I believe we have that in our room. We needed to be a team that just that the roster's rounded out and makes more sense in matchups and all these things. And in Jeff, when you make these decisions, when he kind of got in a spot where he was not going to be on your top line and playing top power play minutes or minutes in general, you have to make hard decisions. And that's the kind of the internal debate that we had. And when you're looking at the cap and all the different things you're juggling, that's why we ended up making the decision. But I'm honestly, Lance, we have talent on that roster. We need to play sharper. We need to play more consistent. We need to be more competitive. And I'm not concerned on the offensive part.
For years, you sought Don's input with the roster. I mean, what did you ask Lindy? I mean, how much input does he have on this roster? I guess?
A huge amount of input. I mean, I believe the best way to run an organization is to be collaborative. I just think that if me personally or someone is just making decisions independently, you can put yourself in some bad places. And of course, it's my job ultimately to make the final decision on certain things, but I'm always bouncing ideas off of him and having him help me. Hey, what do you see? What is our need? You're the one standing behind the bench, game one. What do you, when you look at our group, what do you need? And that's where we really, like I told you a couple months ago when we did the press conference, wanted to get Lindy on board as fast as possible once we decided that was a decision, because we had so much work to do to get to today. And I needed his input in understanding the roster and what he thought we needed. So, yeah, we're in it together. I mean, myself, Lindy, the other coaches are involved in conversations. Obviously, you have Jason, Mark, and Jerry, and scouts. I mean, it's just my style. But and then I take in all the information. I listen. I even hear the Sam's perspective just from a pure number standpoint at times, just to gather it all. And then I need to be the one to make final decisions.
Kevin, you still have a significant amount of salary cap space, regardless of what you do with your RFAs. How do you plan on using that and weaponizing it?
Yeah, I mean, I've probably said this before to you guys. I don't get overly caught up in are you spending to the cap or not? You're putting your roster together to win, and that's our focus. Obviously, when you look at contracts that are coming into the future, you have to plan, or you can get yourself in a really bad spot. So we understand that the first wave of a lot of our players, the core players we've signed, those extensions, some of those are kicking in this year, this upcoming season, and then there's another group coming. So you're planning today, but you're also having to plan out the roster over time to make sure you're staying, as competitive as you can for the longest amount of time. That's the whole goal here.
How much of your plan this offseason is baking in the hope that guys will just frankly play better next season than they did this past?
Yeah, it's an interesting way to put it. You don't just hope, like you have to have some thought and substance to what you're trying to do. And after a lot of conversations with the players, with different coaches, and certainly as we got Lindy on board, there's a belief, I'd say is the better word, that the Tage Thompsons of the world and Alex Tuck and Dylan Cousins and Jack Quinn and these players are going to take steps to improve their own individual game. Some of it may be just because of their own game. Some of it may be the way we're going to play and just the predictability and playing a little bit of a faster, more direct game. That's something that we've talked a lot about, and I think our players will benefit from. So, yeah, and then you want guys to – the J.J. Peterka's had a great year last year from an individual standpoint. You want him to elevate and get better. So that's all part of it. But, yeah, I mean, I think those are the conversations you're having every day over the last couple months as you kind of try to put the pieces in place, and the plan is when you enter free agency or the draft, looking to make trades.
There's so much talk, Kevin, about state taxes. The last couple of Stanley Cup champions. I'm curious, when it comes to New York State, when you guys, this may be falling into Mark's point, perspective or whatever, but how is that ever a factor when you're in negotiations?
Well, if you can get New York State to go tax-free, I'm in. I think it would help our roster, and I'll be up for that too. I'm good with that. Yeah, I mean, it's just a reality of, you focus on what you can control, and that's what I believe. Do those teams in those states have advantages? Of course. But, I don't know. I guess for me, you try to focus your attention on building an organization the right way where people recognize that and say, that's a culture, that's a place that I want to play. And that trumps everything, in my mind, And if there's players that just flat out don't want to be in cold weather or don't want to be in a state that has higher taxes, then they're probably not for us anyways.
Kevin, you talk about, cap numbers and such. I mean, do you agree with the notion? I mean, a lot of people would say you're not winning if you have $20 million to spend, you don't spend. That teams do get close to the cap are the winning teams. I mean, what's your response to that? You might have that amount of space. I mean, it's not over. The off-season's far from over. You see my point.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think part of it is when you have some younger players, though, there's just going to be naturally some different cap numbers. Players on entry level, I'm pretty sure after this year, Jack Quinn and J.J. Peterka, just to use the two that are on entry levels, their contract number is going to look different. So, that's what I'm saying. We're trying to build a team. I don't get overly focused on exactly what that looks like today. Like, why are they going to spend the cap or not the cap? We're going to put the best team we can possibly put on the ice. Yeah, you can go get other guys and contracts that you may regret too, and then you're trying to figure out, like, how do I get out of this? That's what we're trying to avoid. We're trying to build this the right way with discipline, but also we recognize this team needs to win. I understand that, and that's why we focused our attention to what I told you in the beginning, is how we were looking to improve in the off season this year, and which I think we've done so far.
Trade talks that were going on, once the draft ended, you said you had some stuff.
Yep.
Maybe kicking around. Does that get parked, like, for a couple days with this, or is that still?
A little bit. There's still some dialogue going back and forth. I mean, I know there's a lot of rumors out there. I've been probably in the middle of every conversation you can be in, so I'm sure we're attached to a lot of rumors. I mean, some of the ones that people were so convinced that, we didn't want to pay enough for a player, whatever. I don't think the player got traded. Sometimes the other team might just not want to trade a player. That's part of it.
I'll make the bill debt signing, but I mean, just to have a guy that's raised a cup over his head, what does that mean?
Yeah, it's big. There's no way to manufacture that. When you win the Stanley Cup and you get to raise that cup over your head, it's real. And there's something that once you've done it, everybody in the room, when you walk in the locker room, every single player knows you've done it. And just that experience, that feeling of this is what it takes to do it is really important. And that's something we identified too. You know, I mentioned that about Zucker playing a lot of playoff games, you know, winning a lot in this league. I mean, just those experiences for the young group that we still have, because I've told you guys, young is no longer an excuse. That we had to be young for a while to do that. We're still young relative in age, but our guys are more experienced now. And then you can just add those guys in that have had a little bit more of that taste of it, and know just that little bit more what it takes. I think is really valuable for our group.
Did you talk about Zucker?
About Zucker? Yeah, I try to talk to. Some of these things happen fast, and you know, I have to be a little careful, because if there was, say, a guy we were targeting at noon, I may not want anyone to know about it until afternoon. So I'm always careful, but I'm always picking our guys' brains on stuff like this, like who played with who, or this guy I heard trained with this player, and you know, what's he like? Does he actually work hard, or is he just pretend? You know, so those are things I'm always asking our players. I think players are a great resource, you know, just of information for that.
Zemgus, did he inform you he's signing elsewhere?
He didn't. We spoke last night again late, and he knows that you know, we've put an offer on the table that he didn't accept. But I haven't heard, unless it's happened here recently, that he signed anywhere. So, but no, I haven't got a phone call to say that he's not coming back. But hey, you get to this point where he's earned it in his career. You want to see what's out there, and I totally respect that.
You mentioned that, you know, guys hesitant about coming to Buffalo. Sometimes it's just you quickly move on. Is there a sales pitch that happens there? Do you try to push back on that, or is being in Buffalo, like wanting to be in Buffalo, that important?
Well, I think I mean, of course, like anytime you're recruiting a player, there's always, I hate to use that phrase like sales pitch. It's more of a conversation of here's what we're trying to do in Buffalo, and here's why, and here's the people from Lindy Ruff, and you know what I mean. You're explaining the philosophy, and then you know, I guess that's what I mean. You're never going to just say, okay, I'm moving on because this, you know, they might not want to be in Buffalo. You're going to at least try to help them understand what the great parts of this city are away from the rink, and all the different parts of being a Sabre and what that means. So yeah, you're always having those conversations. But I guess what my point is like, you can't spin your wheels, and if there's players that don't want to be here because it's just not, you know, that's not what they feel is right for them, then you move on.
But teams, like you said, there's some teams that haven't traded players that you talk about. If they circle back, are you still interested
Yep.
in listening to them?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, every day, like there's no hard stop to what we're trying to do. Like we will do anything that we feel helps our team get better, helps the roster get better. And there's conversations we've had that, yeah, maybe the team said, hey, we'll park it for a while and let them get through this time and see where all the dust settles. But yeah, I'm always willing to do whatever we need to do to improve, and that could mean a lot of different things. That could mean just players that we currently have. Are we looking to do something, or is that prospects to make our our team better? Yeah, wide open. But in saying all that, it has to make sense, and like we've built a deep prospect pool, but you don't just give prospects away, especially top prospects. It has to make sense. It has to be something back that's going to make your team better or help your organization, or why would you do that? So, but always open to those conversations.
What's the strategy now for, I mean, lots of guys have signed already, but what's the plan ahead now to patching things up in Buffalo or Rochester?
Yeah, I mean, just continue. Like there was a lot. Jason Carmanos was working extremely hard this afternoon. You're making sure that we're getting depth in the organization through Rochester and the different signings, which we'll continue to do. Yeah, I mean, just making sure you're staying plugged in to what's going on. Sometimes there's things that happen where maybe a team ended up getting players they may not have anticipated, and then there's someone on the roster that's going to end up being available that maybe wasn't a week ago. So yeah, the conversations stay ongoing. But in saying all that, I really like the steps we took today. I think we took a big step towards being the type of team that we need to be. Harder to play against, direct, fast, physical. wearing teams down in your face. And then and the coaches are going to do the rest in terms of how we play with structure, the defensive responsibility, the non-negotiables that, our players talked about accountability at the end of the year. They're going to have accountability, I promise you. And this is going to be, a big exciting time for these guys coming into camp to say it's time now. And I get excited about that. So we're gonna continue to look at things, but I like where our roster is.
Can you go over some things on development camp
Sure.
for us? We know, obviously, Savoy, Komarov went deep with the Memorial Cup, but are there any injuries, any other guys missing?
Cohen, I think, is the one injured. I might be, yes. I watched today's, but a little out of the loop with everything going on. But, it did hit me today, a couple things. It was exciting to see our guys that we just drafted in the Sabre colors. Couple things, though, like I started talking to Terry Pagula about this. I think we were 12, 13, 14 top prospects aren't here. And that's our choice, with the guys that played deep into the Memorial Cup or that were in Rochester, number of first-round picks, second-round picks. We made a decision as an organization not to disrupt their training and just kind of where we are based on how long they played. So that's why we made that decision. But I like the group of kids that we have here. And the other thing that hit me, Mike, about development camp that I thought was really cool was I think there were six junior Sabre kids out there today, former junior Sabres. And, I give Patrick Coletta and Sean Wallace and Larry Playfair and the guys that have done a lot of work over at Harbor Center credit. Like, that's pretty cool to see. I think about Charlie Mendola 10 years ago next door and talking about, hey, it would be pretty cool if over time this junior Sabre and academy hockey were built up where players are coming out of here and end up in Sabre uniforms. So it was kind of neat today just to see. I think that's a pretty cool thing to have six former junior Sabres out there. Yeah, I think he could play anywhere, all the way up to, whatever Lindy wants to do. And I think that was probably one of the biggest reasons, besides the stuff I mentioned about the competitiveness and track record and all the success and experience. His ability to play anywhere in our lineup, I think, is critical in style. He's played plenty with top skill guys, or he could play more of that hard checking role. So that's a big thing before we got into the conversations today that I had checked off with Lindy, like, how would you utilize Jason? What do you think his best attributes are? Can you see him fitting with this line or this line? And his answer was, I see him really fitting with any line. And that's what I was hoping to give Lindy, is the ability to mix and match.
Thank you.
Okay, have a great day, everyone. If I don't see you, enjoy.